All right, we're going to have a lot of 49ers information rolling towards you over the course of this show, courtesy the assistant coaches, including one of the new assistants, a former head coach, the very vivacious one, Gus Bradley.
Oh, yeah, he jokes about it. But there's a line to be drawn. No, it's not like that. No, he really is. We have a fabulous relationship.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, I think I'm really excited about him. I know because I know how excited he is to be back here.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Everybody wants to have that head coaching opportunity and do very well. But I just know, hearing his voice when he called me about it, he was so excited about coming back here and being with the people like Kyle. I didn't know Kyle like that, but talking to Robert and hearing about how Kyle operates, that got me excited. How John.
Gus Bradley, big-time personality. It played a little bit more of that clip in the instant reaction video, the big news video. Trent Williams is back in the building. We've already covered that. We've got a whole lot more to cover. That was just to whet your appetite for what we've got coming here. That was Gus Bradley on Robert Saleh, whom he really propelled early in Saleh's career. Saleh was a quality control coach on that Legion of Boom Seattle team. And Gus Bradley, hired to be Jacksonville's head coach, brought Robert Saleh with him to be the linebackers coach in Jacksonville. So just a cool history there, because now all of a sudden you've got Gus Bradley back on the West Coast, this time with the 49ers, not with the Richard Sherman Legion of Boom Seahawks. And it's Robert Saleh in his second stint with the 49ers who was the main catalyst to bring Gus Bradley, who's one of the original architects of the Seattle-style defense under Pete Carroll. It was Robert Saleh who brought Bradley in. But we talked to so many other guys. Chris Kocurek, one of them today. So Bryce Huff passed his physical today. Chris Kocurek spoke today for the first time since the 49ers traded for Bryce Huff. And I think, so many people are talking about Saleh. He loves Bryce Huff, and I get it that compared him to Mariano Rivera as a closer in the past. And Robert Saleh's affinity for Bryce Huff is very, very notable, and I think probably the key driver toward the 49ers trading for the former New York Jet with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think people have forgotten about Chris Kocurek. I mean, it used to always be that the 49ers would pick up a defensive lineman who had talent, maybe some prior success, but maybe had fallen on some harder times in recent years. Somebody like Bryce Huff, who didn't have a good time in 2024 in Philadelphia. But it used to be that people would say, oh boy, he's joining Chris Kocurek now. This is the 49ers D lineman rehab program. These guys are going to figure it out under Chris Kocurek. And I mean, so many different players with talent had turned it around under Chris Kocurek, right? You talk about Arden Key, you talk about Charles Omenihu, Kerry Hyder might have been the original one that we talked so much about in 2020 when he came to the 49ers and notched 8.5 sacks. It's funny to me that they trade for Bryce Huff and there isn't much talk about Chris Kocurek. There's all this talk about Robert Saleh, but I think there needs to be a little bit more talk about Chris Kocurek because he's going to be working directly with Huff in the position room. So I got to ask Kocurek a lot of things today about Huff, and so many of them revolved back around to the pass rushing alignments and the flexibility that Chris Kocurek is now going to be able to employ. Because when you look at how the 49ers defense is run, just think of the brain trust at the top of the defense. You've got Robert Saleh. You have Gus Bradley is there now too. So you have a former head coach and a former defensive coordinator who's obviously gets along with Robert Saleh because of the shared history there. But you also have a very powerful defensive line coach, and that Chris Kocurek runs that room. Chris Kocurek is going to determine the combinations of and rotations of players going out there, and that's going to be up to Kocurek and Kocurek alone. Obviously, he's going to be communicating with Robert Saleh, but it's very, very important that the setup that the 49ers have personnel-wise fits what Kocurek's goals are for this unit. And you go every single season at this assistant coach media availability that we had today at the 49ers facility. Every single season, there's some variation of, okay, this guy is going to be the guy that rushes inside for the 49ers this year. It goes back to 2019 was awesome, right? When they faced the Minnesota Vikings in a divisional round, and you saw Dee Ford and Nick Bosa line up inside, and especially Ford working against guards. They got a big lead, and the Vikings guards had a very hard time beating the 49ers inverted packages on the interior of the defensive line. It was insane what San Francisco was able to do. I think 27-10 was the final score of that win against the Vikings. So you go all the way back to that, and then you go to 2021 where the 49ers had Arden Key stop the run to have some fun. He would move inside because Arden was a lighter edge rusher. And I mean, it wasn't in the 240s, but he wasn't a 270, 280 pound guy. He was probably in the 260s. And if the 49ers were able to make good on stopping the run, something they struggled to do at the start of that season, then Arden Key would usually get to move inside and he'd get to rush against guards, and he'd be able to use his athleticism to beat guards. And the 49ers caught fire down the stretch doing that, and everything was good. I mean, 2021 also featured Charles Omenihu, traded from the Houston Texans. He just took care of Tyron Smith. Remember that in the game against the Dallas Cowboys? That was what? That was the divisional round, right? No, that was the wild card round for the 49ers against the Cowboys, where Charles Omenihu just manhandled one of the better tackles in the game. And it was like, who the hell is this guy? It's the guy that the 49ers traded with the Texans for right before the deadline, and most people thought it'd be an inconsequential move, and Chris Kasarik made it very consequential. So anyway, Arden Key, Omenihu, they've had guys through the years who had this adaptability up front. And the goal is to have that adaptability to the max here in 2025. Everything that we've learned about the 49ers defensive line and what Chris Kasarik's goals with the defensive line are, and how the 49ers want to operate under Robert Saleh. Everything we've learned over the years, I think, is all coming to a head at once this season. And by that, I mean, stop the run to have some fun. Well, that was a huge problem last year, so they're going to be focusing on doing that. That's why I've been talking so much about the draftees and all of those D linemen. They are run defense first kind of guys. That was the 49ers' first goal. But then the key to unlock everything at the end, the cherry on top that was really needed, and this was what Chris Kasarik talked about today, is the speed edge rusher. Somebody that comes in 30 to 35% of downs, that is a specialist in rushing the passer, is not a specialist in stopping the run, but it doesn't matter because he's not in there to stop the run. He comes in the pass rushing situations. That is Bryce Huff. And we heard Kasarik talk about Bryce Huff potentially even lining up inside. That gave me a reminder of when Dee Ford did that against the Minnesota Vikings in that 2019 season, in that divisional round game that I was talking about. He just talked about adaptability. He talked about flexibility. And I think that's what the 49ers have. Listen, they drafted Mykel Williams out of Georgia. He played the jack position of Georgia, which meant that he lined up everywhere from the 9 technique all the way into somebody lining up essentially as a 1 technique, somebody lining up over the A gap. Obviously a funny looking 1 technique. He's much slimmer and taller than your average 1 technique. But Georgia ran some funky stuff on defense, and Mykel Williams showed that he could succeed at many different positions. So the 49ers are saying, well, if we bring Bryce Huff in to play on the outside on these third downs and passing situations, can we move Mykel into one of the interior spots where he played good football at the University of Georgia? And they think that's absolutely a possibility. I'll tell you that the word is that Yetur Gross-Matos has had a good off season, and I think they're going to do more of the same with him, moving him inside. So that was the gist of what Chris Kasarik talked about today. He is more excited than even I anticipated he'd be with the 49ers' adaptable potential up front. Now that he has the full cupboard of pieces, just what, 2 months and a half ago, the cupboard was, for some people, was alarmingly empty. They're all worried that the 49ers had released Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, all those guys were out the building. And we looked at the D-line room and we're like, oh, they need at least 3 starters through the NFL draft. And they went out and they did what they needed to do through the NFL draft in Michael Williams, in Alfred Collins, in CJ West, all different types of players, but all, even though there are differences in body type and there are differences in exactly what their specialties are, I would say they all fall under the run defense first umbrella, which has been absolutely critical for the 49ers. And then you've got Bryce Huff, who's obviously coming in under the pass rushing umbrella. Now you let Chris Kasarik wreak havoc with those guys. Figure out how to pull the puppet strings, figure out exactly who's going to play on what down, who's going to play in what alignment, what kind of stunt moves you're going to throw at opposing offensive lines. You could talk about stopping the run to have some fun, but how about just giving Chris Kasarik personnel so he could have some fun with it? The 49ers had not drafted a defensive lineman in the first round since Javon Kinlaw in 2020 when they drafted Michael Williams in this first round. The highest pick since that Kinlaw draft was number 61 to Drake Jackson in 2022. That was the same year that Brock Purdy went at number 262. So they had essentially turned off the faucet when it came to bringing new defensive line talent in through the NFL draft. I know that they signed Javon Hargrave ahead of that 2023 season, and he wasn't a bad player for the 49ers, but then he got hurt in front of 2024. The problem with Hargrave is that he was a pass rusher first, run defender second, and because they were not investing big time in this defensive line over the years, and a lot of it had to do with the Trey Lance trade because that took away a lot of draft capital, but because they had turned off that faucet by and large, the 49ers got into a place where things had seriously eroded up front. And they turned the faucet back on this year with Michael Williams, with CJ West, with Alfred Collins. And now, I look at Bryce Huff essentially as a draft pick. And it's a lower floor draft pick, in my opinion, because draft picks are all lottery tickets, right? You're making a projection with all these guys, particularly the ones, and in the case of all draft picks, the ones who have never played at the NFL level before. Because even if they've played in a similar system, even if you have identifiable traits, how are they going to translate to the NFL? That's been one of the hardest things to figure out for anybody in the history of talent evaluation and drafting. It's why the draft is such a crapshoot. So you're using either a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick to get Bryce Huff. So it's a lottery ticket, except one where you've got some guardrails because he's already played in the NFL. He's already succeeded in the NFL, and he's succeeded in your system. And not just for 1 year, too. He was really good in 2022. 22 and 23 were 2 top 3 pass rush productivity years for Bryce Huff. So he just got more opportunities because he earned them by the 2023 season. That's why he had the 10 sacks versus whatever it was, like 4 sacks or 2022. I know PFF counts the sacks a little bit differently than the NFL tally because they don't count half sacks, but he was a guy who wreaked havoc in both of those seasons. So that's where the 49ers are right now along the defensive line. They've turned on the faucet again, and Chris Kasarik, I think, is going to have some more to work with. Also talked to Johnny Holland today, and every day I learn something new when I'm in the 49ers facility, which makes it so exciting. I did not know that Johnny Holland was a QB first, not in NFL, but at lower levels of football. He was a quarterback turned linebacker, turned All-American linebacker. So at the college level, somewhere between high school and college, or maybe early in college, I'll have to go do some more research on this. Johnny Holland made the transition from quarterback to linebacker. It just so happens that Chaz Surratt, the 49ers' new veteran linebacker, one of the 3 ex-Jets players they added over the course of the past week or so, Chaz Surratt was famous for being the QB1 at North Carolina who switched to linebacker and then got drafted in the 3rd round, played under Robert Saleh with the Jets, and now the 49ers have signed Chaz Surratt to bolster the linebacker room, a former quarterback. And his position coach now, Johnny Holland, was also a former quarterback. And you see the game the way that a quarterback sees the game if you have any quarterback background or DNA in you. And that's so important because when we talk about the chess match on the field, it's always going to be between the quarterback and the Mike linebacker first. That's the first chess match. Anytime the huddles break, quarterback's going to the line of scrimmage. He's going to pick up the mic. The center's got to also pick up the mic. I mean, that's the heartbeat of the opposing defense. So any linebacker who has played the quarterback position, you're probably not going to have a linebacker who's played center. So quarterback to linebacker, even though it's rare, that's going to be the more usual position transition. So any linebacker who has that quarterback experience is going to be somebody who sees that offense in a unique way, sees the offense from the vantage point of the offense, which I do think is some very, very valuable stuff. So Johnny Holland pointed that out about Chaz Surratt. We heard from Brian Fleury, 49ers tight ends coach, about Luke Farrell, the new tight end whom the 49ers signed at the beginning of free agency. He did a lot of gap scheme stuff in Jacksonville, and this is going to be a really interesting projection for the 49ers because they were running a different offense with Jacksonville. Even though that the 49ers seem to have taken a liking to some of these Jaguars players. You've got Mac Jones, who's come over to San Francisco. Gabe Davis has visited. Gabe was in Jacksonville last year, so they obviously were watching some tape of that Jacksonville offense. And of course, Luke Farrell. And Luke Farrell was a gap scheme blocker, did a lot of pass protection, and I think the 49ers are very interested in Luke Farrell pass protecting for them so they don't have to pass protect George Kittle as much. So Kittle can run out on more patterns downfield. But in order for him to execute what the 49ers are going to ask him to do from a run blocking standpoint, there is going to have to be a little bit of a leap, right? And the 49ers like what they see from Farrell from a blocking. I think they loved a lot of the H-back stuff that he did in Jacksonville. I think that's going to translate well. And I think that they saw him with the sift blocks. They saw him with some of that movement. They saw how well he targeted defenders. And they said, okay, even though technically what we're doing is going to be different, he has shown the athleticism, the toughness, the coordination, again, the targeting ability to execute on those blocks. And Brian Fleury today talked about the 49ers being excited about early returns on Luke Farrell. Now, pads aren't on yet, and it's going to be really, really hard to make definitive judgments on blockers, especially until those pads come on. And that's why, right now I'm doing instant reactions to these practices. It's fun to be out on the field. It's fun to talk to all the coaches today. I mean, Gus Bradley, what a personality Gus Bradley is. We could play a little bit more of the video in a little bit, but it's great to be out on the field and in the facility, but it's really just a warm-up right now, right? And I think Brian Fleury really underscored that today. It's really just a warm-up until those pads do come on. Leonard Hankerson, 49ers wide receivers coach, he gave some really, I thought, real intel on Ricky Pearsall. It's like, where can these guys get better? And a lot of times, it's kind of a obfuscated answer, a little bit of a non-answer. The coaches don't really want to give all too much away. And you understand you have to learn how to read in between the lines. But Leonard today was really, really straightforward. And he said Ricky Pearsall, the main key for him to make that jump from year 1 to year 2 will be to get stronger, because he will get brushed off of his route a little too much when he's in mono combat. Obviously, you can press cover in the NFL over those first 5 yards, and it's really important to be able to release out of that with the route unscathed, with you still following your plan, because it's such a timing league. So as soon as you're thrown off at the start of a route in the NFL, if a quarterback needs to get rid of the ball in under 2.5 seconds, you're facing a big problem if you physically aren't up to the challenge. And Ricky Pearsall, it's a strength issue for him, I think. It's so funny because so many people talk about the 49ers and have talked about Ricky Pearsall over the course of the past year, and they've just been so wrong about Ricky. And this goes all the way back to after the 49ers drafted him in his very first practice at rookie minicamp, where he, nobody could cover him at rookie minicamp. He was a first-round draft pick. He was separating. He was wide open downfield. 49ers didn't have very good quarterback play at that rookie minicamp, so people couldn't get him the ball. But all of a sudden, I started hearing on YouTube and on Twitter, oh, Ricky Pearsall struggled. He can't separate. I'm like, what are you talking about? The guy can obviously separate. He's got smooth moves, and all the metrics indicate that the separation, even on deep patterns, was above average last year. And then he exploded over the last 2 games. He was really good. It's not a matter of separation for Ricky Pearsall. It's a matter, especially if we're going to be talking about down in, down out consistency, it is a matter of strength at the line of scrimmage. The strength to fight off some of that press contact. And I think that's something that naturally is going to come year over year for Ricky Pearsall, especially between years 1 and 2. Because you enter the NFL as a rookie, and forget about the fact that he got shot in the chest and that entire hellacious experience. Let's just focus on what rookie receivers have to do. They're coming off of the combine circuit, and that happens in late February, early March. They get drafted. Then they have to show up to OTAs and they have to perform in training camp. The combine circuit is all about how fast you can run, how agile you are. Those are the most important metrics for wide receivers. So many guys, you don't look at a receiver's bench and say, that's why I want to pick him. Oh, he benched 18 reps. Let's pick him. No, you look at their 40. All the buzz is about the 3-cone, the 40, what's the 10-yard split, all that stuff. So guys typically train a little bit lighter than their playing weight because they're training to run at the combine. They're not training to play football. So your first season as a wide receiver is very often one that's a product of training geared for speed and not strength. And on top of all that, then Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest on August 31st of last year. So and we're not even talking about the playbook and all that yet, because it's like a foreign language at the NFL level. All the responsibility that players have that is greater than players in college. So Ricky Pearsall dealt with all 3 of these pillars of adversity. Obviously, one was much greater than the others. He ended up overcoming all of them and delivering 2 really big games at the end of the season. But what has to be better for him to consistently be able to do that moving forward, and I think what reasonably will be better, because now he's had an entire offseason to just train strength instead of having to focus on the combine and do all that. I think he's going to be stronger the way that Leonard Hankerson, the 49ers wide receivers coach, said that he needs to be stronger today. So that's the thought on Ricky Pearsall. I'm going to open this up to questions for you guys. I think it's a really good time to ask all the questions that you do want to ask here about the 49ers. And it's a busy day of intel. I've just been here for 23 minutes. That's Christian McCaffrey's number, Michael Jordan's number. And I've been giving you the intel in just completely unadulterated fashion. You've heard a lot of information flow out here over the course of the past 23 minutes. So now it's your turn to ask some of these questions. And it's my turn to tell you that this show is sponsored by Exter. Exter makes really, really cool wallets like this one. I see I got some money in the money band here, but I've got all my credit cards in this wallet, and it's much smaller than my old one. And I could simply hit this button right here. I don't know if you guys, here, you could see it well. And the credit cards are all going to slide out like this. It's really cool. You could press them back in. It's all good. So Exter, as you could see up on the screen, they've got a Father's Day sale coming up, but 40% off through June 26th of this month. Father's Day coming up at the end of June. Use the discount code at checkout for an additional 10% off. So you can get 50% off for these really, really sleek wallets. And it even has a little location thing that I could tie to my iPhone. So if I lose my wallet, it starts beeping. The code is Lombardi. So we've got a link here. I'm going to send the link to Mike. He's going to put it in the description if we haven't done that yet. But Exter is the name of the wallet. The link is in the description. Code Lombardi through June 26th. If you use that code, you can get half off this really slick wallet. So Exter sponsors the show. Make sure to check them out because this wallet has really changed the game for me. Really cool. neat when I actually have the product and I can show you guys. Mike is going to toss that into the description for everybody, so you can go ahead and check out Exter. I just sent it to you, Mike. There you go. It's time for a 49ers Q&A. Let's get that text title up for everybody. Good. 49ers Q&A is open. So Father's Day is the 15th. I didn't know exactly what the day is. So this sale for Exter goes on through June 26th. So you've got 11 days past Father's Day to get this wallet for your dad or get it for yourself and be in a much better wallet. I used to have this really, really thick wallet, like up until a few days ago, up until I got this Exter. And people would be like, oh my gosh, it's massive. And this is just like a really neat way to condense all the cards into one spot. Mike has the link. We've got it here, so you can go check it out. I don't want to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, guys. Everybody's asking about Brandon Aiyuk and social. Yeah, we had to pretend to care about the social media posts last year because he was in a contract negotiation. That was my limit of caring about social media posts. And if I'm not sure who they're directed to, if it's intentionally murky as far as meaning, there is no reason for me at this point to try to decipher it. I know that he posted today. Back when he's negotiating a contract, you almost have to, because you got to figure out what's going on. Is he trying to send a message with this post or that post? Right now, though, he's under contract. The 49ers aren't going to trade him. They can't trade him. We've talked about the contractual situation. He's got a torn ACL and a torn MCL. And, here's one thing in Brandon Aiyuk's defense. There's a ridiculous narrative online now saying, oh, Stephon Diggs is back out at practice at OTAs. Why isn't Brandon Aiyuk? Stephon Diggs got hurt before Aiyuk. They have different injuries. Diggs tore his ACL. Is a clean tear. That means he can be back around this time. Aiyuk tore his ACL and his MCL. So, I think maybe Aiyuk had been a little upset at the discourse online about why is he not back and Diggs is back. But there just is a lot of stupidity when it comes to takes surrounding Brandon Aiyuk from people and the injury that I think he realized he's not going to be back in all likelihood for week 1. This is something we've known for a while. Realize that the 49ers need him to have an optimal offense. He's probably not going to be 100% of his 2023 self early in this season, maybe not at all in this season, but the 49ers just have to make do with what's there. Like it's as simple as that. And no more dramatics need to be attached to this, which is why I'm not going to get into all the social media posts, because I think that would be a waste of everybody's time. Nice. Greg watched the video on Upton Stout. This is the kind of stuff we should be talking about. Like, I literally traveled to Western Kentucky, which is where 49ers rookie defensive back Upton Stout went to school. I literally traveled there to talk to their head coach, Tyson Helton. You know who used to be the head coach at Western Kentucky a few decades ago? That was Jack Harbaugh. Jim's dad was the head coach over there. Anyway, Western Kentucky had a cool stadium. They're called the Hilltoppers. It's where Upton Stout went. They gave me a tour of everything. They rolled out the red carpet, literally the red carpet, because that's the color there. The Hilltoppers, they're red. I walked around the downtown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we got this really good intel piece with a bunch of really neat B-roll on Upton Stout. So why don't we spend time? You can go watch it. It's the headline video on the YouTube, or you could search it, David Lombardi, Upton Stout. Why don't you go watch that if you're ever feeling bored and trying to figure out what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk's social media? I think that your time is much better spent talking about Upton Stout. Appreciate it. And speaking of Upton Stout, so Jack Harbaugh coached at Western Kentucky. Guess who wanted Upton Stout to transfer from Western Kentucky to Michigan? Jim Harbaugh. I think that's a great sign. If Jim Harbaugh wanted Upton Stout, well, he probably was a dog. And Jim Harbaugh, dog stands for determined athlete with grit. That's a Jim Harbaugh-ism. But he wanted Upton Stout. Upton Stout decided to stay at Western Kentucky, and then the 49ers drafted him at pick number 100 in the third round. You want me to talk about Tariq Owens, huh? Well, this is a big opportunity for Tariq. Brandon Ayuk is on the shelf right now. We'll see with a potential Demarcus Robinson suspension. New receiver, rookie coming in is Jordan Watkins, who I think is impressed so far. He caught a lot of passes last week. We're going to get a chance to see Watkins again tomorrow. Leonard Hankerson, the receivers coach, confirmed that Watkins has been doing a good job studying in the playbook, all that kind of stuff. So right now you've got Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall out with the hamstrings, but Jennings and Watkins were the two top guys last week. And Demarcus Robinson was involved too in practice. So you got three players, only two of which are established at the NFL level. If you're Tariq Owens during OTAs, this is your chance to step up. This really is a chance to shine, get a few more reps, and nothing's going to be won right now. I think stuff can be lost during OTAs. Nothing can really be won during OTAs. You win jobs, you win roles in training camp, but set yourself up for a good training camp. This is a raw prospect coming out of college, just like his dad, a basketball player predominantly up until a few years ago, who I thought we saw Tariq Owens really blossom over the course of training camp last year. That was what was really special about Tariq Owens to me, is that I thought he was bad at the start of training camp. He was dropping the ball a lot, a lot of drops for Tariq Owens. But by the end, he was winning deep routes. He was winning one-on-ones against established cornerbacks. By the end, you could see how far Tariq Owens had come from point A to point B. Then he broke his hand, so that cut it short. But the 49ers brought him back, and he finished the season on the practice squad. So big opportunity in front of T.O.'s son right now for the 49ers. Give a bold roster take on someone who potentially doesn't make the 53-man. Well, why don't we open up the 53-man? I think that's probably a good way to operate here, so we could look. I mean, you're putting me on the spot here, so it's going to take a little bit of brainstorming for this to happen. But I've got it right here. And we can share the screen right here. All right, we're going to go through this. Somebody doesn't make the 53-man. I think offensive line is probably the first, tight end. Somebody like Braden Willis or Jake Ton just may not make it, but I don't know if that's bold enough for you. I don't know if that's going to send shockwaves through what's going on. Offensive line is going to be interesting because not all 9 guys. If everybody's healthy, I don't think all 9 make it. They've taken 8 usually in the past. And I've got 9 listed here on the 53-man roster. I could zoom in a little bit further for you to have a better look at this. So does Spencer Burford make this team? Does he, maybe Spencer Burford beats out Andre Dillard and Burford is your swing tackle? Nick Zakelj finished out last season, I thought, really well, and I think he's your backup center if you're the 49ers. So, and then obviously Connor Colby, the rookie, he's a 7th-round pick, so he's not guaranteed to make the team, but I do think that he'll make it. I think we may see Colby in that starting lineup sooner rather than later. So one of these offensive linemen probably won't make it unless the 49ers carry 9 this time. Defensively, are we sure that Jordan Elliott makes this team? They've got a lot of run-stop focused guys now at defensive tackle because they've added Alfred Collins and CJ West. I think if anything, the 49ers can use a more pass rush forward defensive tackle. That is not Jordan Elliott. So TBD, we'll see there. Defensive backfield, Darrell Luter, does he make the team? He's been on the team here for the past couple of years. Is this Darrell Luter's chance to take the next step? And does he seize that opportunity? So that's a possibility of a cut. DB is really, really confusing because of the injuries to Brown and Mustafa. Right now, they've got Grant and Pinnock playing the first string safety spots. So we'll see. But those are my thoughts on the roster. To answer one of the questions here, I'm not afraid to talk about anybody, but I only talk about significant people. So if you're significant surrounding the 49ers, we'll talk about you on the channel. I'm focused on the main thing, and I'm focused on, players, coaches, and, then we'll talk about reports that are correct, such as Trent Williams being in the building, Trent Williams not retiring as had apparently been a rumor in some parts of the internet. So hopefully that answers your question. We're focused on facts here, and we're focused on players, coaches, people surrounding the 49ers who are significant. People still talking about Bryce Huff and Robert Saleh. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to ask Gus Bradley about Bryce Huff. Gus Bradley, I mean, such a vivacious guy. Talking to him today, he's going to be a spark plug of energy in that 49ers coaching room. Think about where they were last year, where, I mean, they still had a new defensive coordinator who obviously wasn't his most confident self yet in the press conferences. He didn't have the same type of energy from Nick Sorensen that you do with somebody like Robert Saleh, who, by the way, has grown into the role too. Robert, his press conferences were not nearly what they are now back early with the 49ers in 17 and 18. These guys have to learn on the job. It's a lot of pressure. But now, last year you had Nick Sorensen, and then the veteran voice that you had in the building to help out was Brandon Staley. But that was really a guy who came from a different scheme, and the 49ers were doing their best to try to evolve. And obviously they have just now gone back to the master, to Robert Saleh himself, and he goes back to his former boss. Gus Bradley brings Bradley in, and that energy that the 49ers have now in that defensive room from the coaching staff, I think, is something we saw it from Gus Bradley, and we can go back to it from Gus Bradley right
But there's a line to be drawn. No, it's not like that. No, he really is. We have a fabulous relationship. Yeah. It is. I mean, I think I'm really excited about him. I know, because I know how excited he is to be back here. Yeah. I mean, right? Everybody wants to have that head coaching opportunity and do very well. But I just know, hearing his voice when he called me about it, he was so excited about coming back here and being with the people like Kyle. I didn't know Kyle like that, but talking to Robert and hearing about how Kyle operates, that got me excited. How John Lynch is, how the Yorks is, the whole organization, so it was like, let's go, man. I mean, this is a great opportunity for you. You're excited about it. How can't I be excited when you're that excited about it? Yeah. So it's more of that type of relationship. And, I guess everybody has egos, right? But, I think for him and I, it's really not about that.
So when he's joking, saying go drop a play or what? What is he telling you?
No, I do think that we do believe strongly in challenging one another. I think that is. Because if you have humility, you got a chance to get better, right? And if you know that you can challenge one another and it's coming from a good place, you've got a chance. But he's the boss.
That's Gus Bradley. That's a good way to finish. A lot of energy. This was a lot of information. Talked for 40 minutes, just pouring 49ers information out. Got a big one coming up tomorrow morning. We're going to have even more. You're going to get to hear from some of the coaches tomorrow morning. We'll keep it all under the 90 seconds that we need to keep it under by rules of the 49ers. But that all is going to be dropping tomorrow morning, and I'm sure you'll learn even more about the 49ers then. The big news update earlier today, go and watch that. We got some nice info on Trent Williams and Bryce Huff. A good news day for San Francisco. Talk to everybody soon.